Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive into the world of immigration. You know we love digging into the latest news, and today we're bringing you updates that are especially relevant if you're here on an F1, H-1B, or J-1 visa.
Those visas that are often the stepping stone to making the U.S. your permanent home?
You got it.
Yeah.
And we're pulling all this info straight from greencardforselfpetition.com. They're a fantastic resource.
Not only for news, but they've got these DIY green card packets.
Right. So if you're even thinking about maybe going the DIY route for your green card journey,
Definitely check them out.
Okay, so let's jump into some headlines. Some of this stuff could actually be a game changer.
Absolutely. Especially for any aspiring doctors out there.
Oh, yeah. I saw this Florida thing.
Florida's Live Healthy initiative.
Yes. They're really trying to make it easier for foreign-trained doctors to get licensed.
It's really fascinating because they're acknowledging that,
There's a need.
yeah, there's a huge need for physicians, especially in states with,
Aging populations.
yeah, or just booming populations in general.
And they're saying, hey, great training abroad.
We value them.
We need you here in the U.S.
It's that.
That seems like a really positive step.
It is, and it's not just Florida.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we're seeing this pop up.
The newsletter mentions Alabama, Colorado, Idaho,
Washington.
all on board with similar programs. So it makes you think, is this going to be a trend?
Is this going to become like a fast track for some folks to integrate into the U.S. system?
Maybe even a boost for an EB-1A down the line. Who knows?
Yeah, something to think about.
Definitely.
Okay, so switching gears a bit, greencardforselfpetition.com also had these two articles about self-petitions, and I know that those can be a bit confusing.
Yeah, it can feel like a maze.
So I'm glad they're tackling some of these common questions.
It's breaking it down.
Yeah, like one of them is all about how to prove you're a top dog in your field for the EB-1A.
The extraordinary ability green card.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not enough to just be good at what you do.
Right, you got to stand out.
You have to be recognized as truly exceptional on a national or international level.
So like awards.
Awards, memberships in prestigious organizations.
Publications where you're the expert.
Yeah, where they're featuring you.
They're coming to you for your knowledge.
Exactly. And that's the kind of recognition that can really make your application stand out.
Okay, I got it. So it's really about showing that you're...
At the top of your game.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other article was about the NIW.
The National Interest Waiver.
And they were answering a question about what happens if you switch jobs during the process.
Which I bet is a concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're in the middle of this whole thing and then...
Life happens.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do?
Well, this is where the NIW gets really interesting because unlike some other categories, it's not tied to a specific employer.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's really about you, your qualifications, your work, and how it benefits the U.S. as a whole. So changing jobs isn't usually a deal breaker as long as that new role still aligns with the expertise that you highlighted in your application.
Interesting. Okay, so it's a little bit more flexible than...
A little bit more forgiving.
Than some of the other categories. Okay, now for some breaking news. This could be really big for anyone from Lebanon who's listening.
Oh yeah, this is hot off the press and potentially huge for thousands of people.
What's going on?
So the Department of Homeland Security is offering both deferred enforced departure, or DED, and temporary protected status, which is TPS.
To Lebanese nationals.
To eligible Lebanese nationals.
Okay, so big difference there. DED is basically like, we're going to pause on deportations.
Yeah, it's a temporary reprieve.
And then TPS is more like, you can actually live and work here legally.
For a specific period of time?
And what is that in this case?
In this case, it's 18 months.
18 months. Okay, so not everyone from Lebanon qualifies for this, right?
Right. There's a cutoff date.
What is it?
You need to have been in the U.S. since October 16th, 2024.
Okay, so if you've been here since October 16th, 2024...
You could be eligible.
And they're thinking this could affect how many people?
They're estimating around 11,000 individuals could be eligible for TPS, and then another 1,740 Lebanese students who are currently on F1 visas.
Wow, okay, so that's...
It's significant.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about something that's super relevant to anyone who's navigating the U.S. job market.
Especially on a visa.
The Department of Justice is cracking down on employment discrimination.
Yes, this is a big win.
Huge.
For anyone who's ever felt unfairly treated during their job search.
Because we're talking about situations where employers are rejecting perfectly valid work documents.
Right, or they pull back job offers because of someone's citizenship status.
Or they're demanding specific documents from non-citizens that they wouldn't ask of U.S. citizens.
Exactly, it's just flat out wrong, and the DOJ is sending a clear message.
This is not okay.
Yeah.
We're watching.
I don't like to tolerate this.
So what exactly happened in these cases that they cracked down on? Like, what are we talking about here?
Well, the DOJ announced several settlements, and I think a couple of them really highlight the issues. So in one case, you had a company in Chicago
Yeah.
that refused to accept a valid employment authorization document from a worker with temporary protected status.
Wow.
And then in another case, a company in Wisconsin rescinded a job offer after they found out the candidate wasn't a U.S. citizen.
Just because they weren't a U.S. citizen.
Yep, and these companies ended up facing hefty fines, so it's a pretty clear deterrent.
Yeah, I like seeing those bad actors get hit where it hurts.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of good news, it looks like USCIS is finally getting on board with the digital age.
I was going to say, finally.
They're rolling out this new online filing option for employment authorization documents. You know, those EADs?
Oh, this is fantastic.
It's about time.
Right. No more snail mail.
Fingers crossed.
Hoping your application doesn't get lost in the black hole.
Seriously.
This online system has the potential to really streamline things, cut down on processing times, reduce the risk of errors.
All good things.
Plus, it just makes the whole process way more accessible, especially for people who might have a tougher time with traditional mail services.
Absolutely. Okay, I have to share this success story because it's so inspiring.
Oh, I love these.
We've got Bathlomew Ebika, a Nigerian engineer who managed to snag a national interest waiver.
Amazing.
Talk about impressive.
This guy is a powerhouse.
So he developed this machine learning model for 3D printing.
Collaborated with NASA on space exploration technology.
Contributed to a multi-million-dollar NSF project.
The list goes on.
It's incredible. And it really shows you that the NIW is about recognizing exceptional contributions to the U.S.
No matter where you're from.
Exactly. It's a real-life example of what we were talking about with self-petitions.
Right. These pathways are achievable.
You can do it if you've got the goods.
Okay.
Quick question before we dive into the visa bulletin. Can athletes get in on the self-petition action too?
You bet they can. In fact, the newsletter even highlights how Olympic medalists often need expert help navigating the EB-1A process.
Really? Even Olympic medalists?
Yeah. Even with a stack of medals, it's not always a slam dunk.
Wow, that's surprising.
It is, and there's this company called Spynn Publicity that specializes in helping athletes build really strong cases.
Oh, interesting.
They go beyond just listing achievements. You know, they actually craft really compelling narratives that showcase the athletes' extraordinary abilities and their contributions to their sport.
Oh, so they're like storytelling ninjas for the sports world.
You could say that.
Okay, so they're hoping these athletes really make their case in a way that resonates.
Exactly. And they work hand in hand with immigration lawyers, so it's a really collaborative effort.
Okay, great. So it's not like they're replacing lawyers or anything like that?
No, they're working together.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's tackle something that's probably on everyone's mind. The Visa Bulletin.
The November 2024 edition just dropped, and it's got some updates.
Especially if you're waiting on a family-based visa.
Yes. Lots of movement in almost all family-based categories.
So before we get into the specifics, can you just quickly remind everyone about priority dates and how those fit into all of this?
Of course. So your priority date, think of it as your place in line for a green card.
Got it.
It's the date your petition was initially filed, and the Visa Bulletin tells you when your priority date becomes current, which means you can finally move forward with your application.
It's like your golden ticket moment.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The wait times, they can vary wildly depending on your visa category and your country of origin.
Sure.
Some countries just have longer queues than others, unfortunately. But the Visa Bulletin helps us track these trends over time.
You can see how things are moving.
Right, and get a sense of when your number might finally be called.
Okay, so we've got the basics down, but let's get specific. What does this latest Visa Bulletin actually mean for our listeners who are, anxiously waiting for their chance to make the U.S. their home?
Well, let's break it down. Imagine you're from India and you filed a petition for your sibling back in, let's say, January of 2018. So you'd be looking at the F4 category for India, and we see that 11-month jump we talked about. So depending on when exactly you filed this could mean you're getting closer to that current status. It's definitely a step in the right direction. But let's say you're from Mexico and you're waiting on a petition in the F2B category for your unmarried adult child. That category also saw a significant advancement, so there's reason to be optimistic there too.
Okay, so some positive movement happening, but I'm sure some people are listening and thinking like, yeah, but what about me?
Right, my category barely budged.
Exactly. It would be frustrating.
It is, it's tough.
You're waiting and you're seeing other people move ahead.
The waiting game is so hard, especially when you're eager to start your life here in the U.S.
Exactly. But I guess every little bit helps.
Every bit of progress is a win, and sometimes even a seemingly small shift can have a ripple effect down the line. So the key is to stay informed, track those updates, and use resources like greencardforselfpetition.com to understand what it all means for your unique situation. They can even help you calculate estimates based on your priority date.
Okay, speaking of things that can feel a little bit confusing,
Mm-hmm.
there's been some buzz lately about F1 visas and studying abroad.
Oh, yeah.
I bet a lot of our student listeners are wondering what's up with that.
The F1 visa situation.
Yeah.
So there was this update to the USCIS policy manual that initially caused a bit of a stir in the international student community. It seemed to suggest that F1 visa holders who study abroad for more than 5 months would need a brand new Form I-20 to get back into the U.S. And as you can imagine, that sparked a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, I can see how that would throw a wrench in your plan, especially if you're in the middle of your studies. But it sounds as maybe it wasn't as big of a deal as people first thought.
Right. It turned out to be more of a clarification than a major policy shift. The Student and Exchange Visitor Program, or SEVP, stepped in and explained that this wasn't actually a new rule. Students have always needed to reapply for a visa if they've been outside the U.S. for more than 5 months and weren't enrolled in a study abroad program approved by their school.
So more like a reminder to dot your I's and cross your T's.
Exactly, but it does highlight how important it is to stay up to date on any changes and to always go straight to the source official websites like USCIS and SEVP for accurate information. There's a lot of noise out there, especially online, so it's crucial to be discerning and not get swept up in rumors or misinformation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I love how greencardforselfpetition.com not only keeps us in the loop with the latest news, but they also offer these DIY packets.
So it's a great resource.
For someone who's feeling a little bit overwhelmed, it's like having a roadmap and a toolkit all in one.
Absolutely. They're all about empowering individuals to take charge of their immigration journey. Their packets provide step-by-step guidance templates and even access to their Knowledge Bot, a virtual assistant that can answer your questions along the way.
It's like having a virtual immigration guru by your side.
Right there to help you understand the process.
Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question that's probably on a lot of minds with all these changes happening. What's the biggest takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is to remember that knowledge is power, especially when it comes to immigration.
Yeah.
The U.S. immigration system is constantly evolving with new pathways, emerging policies being tweaked, and court rulings shifting the landscape, so staying informed is absolutely essential, even if it feels a bit overwhelming at times.
It's a dynamic landscape out there, like you said earlier.
Exactly, but don't let that discourage you. Resources like the ones we've discussed today, including the amazing tools and information provided by greencardforselfpetition.com, can make navigating these complexities much easier.
So true. It's all about finding those trustworthy sources of information, breaking down the process into manageable steps, and remembering that you're not alone in this journey. There's a whole community of people out there, including us, who are here to support you every step of the way. Big thanks to greencardforselfpetition.com for providing the news that fueled today's deep dive. And of course, huge thanks to you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and best of luck on your immigration journey.
Absolutely. And, even if you're not quite ready to dive into the whole self-petition thing, just staying informed is never a bad thing.
The more you know, right, the better prepared you'll be when the time comes. And hey, even if you're not directly impacted by some of these updates right now, it's still good to just kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the immigration world.
I couldn't agree more. This stuff can seem really complicated, but it doesn't have to be a total mystery.
Right.
There are resources out there, people who've been in your shoes, experts who can help you make sense of it all. On that note, I think we've covered a ton of ground today.
We have. It's been a whirlwind.
It really has a whirlwind of news, insights, inspiring stories.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
Just this. Don't get discouraged by the complexities of the immigration process. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay hopeful. Your dream of calling the U.S. home is within reach, and we're here to help you navigate the journey.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thank you to greencardforselfpetition.com for providing all the great info that fueled today's deep dive, and of course, a massive thank you to you, our amazing listener, for joining us.
Until next time, stay empowered, stay persistent, and keep reaching for those goals.
Thank you for listening to a podcast by greencardselfpetition.com. Visit greencardselfpetition.com for do-it-yourself packets. We aim to provide the collective experience of numerous applicants who have successfully self-petitioned for their green cards without employer sponsorship, in either the EB-1A, Extraordinary Ability, or EB-2, NIW National Interest Waiver categories. Our DIY packets are designed to assist you in your self-petition journey.